President Obama is delaying his overseas trip by 3 days to March 21st to keep the heat on skeptical House Democrats whose votes are needed to get the bill passed. Rachel Martin has the latest from Washington. Good morning, Rachel.
Good morning, Juju. That's right. The president opted to stay in Washington a little longer to oversee what has become an epic legislative battle for his top domestic priority.
Democrats need 216 votes to pass health care reform, and they're fighting for every one.
Each day we move closer in terms of narrowing the decisions that need to be made.
But there are still big disagreements over how to pay for the bill, and a handful of Democrats like Bart Stupak of Michigan say they will vote no over concerns about abortion funding, as he told a Michigan radio station yesterday.
You know, in this town, I guess some people roll over every 5 minutes on their principles and beliefs. I don't.
This week, Republicans launched a phone campaign targeting Democrats still on the fence about the bill.
Your congressman, Steve Driehaus, is considering changing his position on abortion and voting yes for this bill. Now, the only way to make sure that your tax dollars will not pay for abortion is to stop the bill in its tracks.
Still, Democratic leaders are pushing forward, trying to pass the Senate version of the bill through the House. By delaying his trip to Australia and Indonesia, the president bought himself some time to try to win over moderate Democrats, but they're getting pressure from Republicans, too.
For many members of Congress, the time for choosing is near. Do what the party leadership demands, or do what the people have asked you to do. And if my colleagues don't mind a bit of advice from a newcomer, I'd suggest going with the will of the people.
Democrats say they know the clock is ticking.
It will take a little faith, but what we do always does.
But it's going to take a lot more than faith to get health care reform bill through, Bill, and the president knows that. On Monday, he heads to Ohio, where he'll give a speech, once again making his public case for health care reform.
Okay, Rachel, and as you know, the man in charge of trying to whip up those 216 yay votes is James Clyburn of South Carolina. He joins us now from the capital, Columbia. Congressman, thanks for being with us.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
How many votes do you have right now?
Well, we have not started counting votes yet. We believe we're in a very good place. The mood of our conference, our caucus is a very good mood, and we're looking forward to passing this bill very soon.
But we heard from Bart Stupak in there. There are those who are concerned about abortion language. Others are concerned about immigration reform. They want to leverage this whole impasse to get things done on that front. We've had so many deadlines come and go. Why should our viewers believe that this time something will actually happen?
Well, I think that before we were still negotiating. We have now stopped negotiating. We have begun to freeze the design on this plan, and so I think we are in a good place now. Before we were in the middle of negotiations. We're beyond that now. I've heard from quite a few faith people within the last 24 hours that they are satisfied that what we've done in the Senate with this abortion language meet the test of no federal funds being paid toward abortions. I think that I've heard from 2 or 3 people who voted the last time on that question. They're now saying they are satisfied that this language meet their test. So everybody is now in a good place.
If you read the polls, people who support your efforts are somewhat lukewarm about the prospect, but people who are opposed to it hate it. And even 2 Democratic pollsters, men who worked for Bill Clinton and Jimmy Carter, wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post yesterday begging you to stop what they call this march of folly with the risk of unmitigated disaster for Democrats in the November elections. Why do you disagree with that sentiment?
Well, because I have been campaigning among the American people. I've been all over this country. Last weekend, I was out in California. The weekend before that, I was in Texas and New Mexico. And I know full well that the American people want to see us end discrimination against people with pre-existing conditions. They want us to end rescissions when people get sick. They want their children who are going to graduate schools and professional schools to be able to stay on their insurance policies until they finish that coursework. So I am convinced that the American people, when you go through this bill by pieces, they all agree with what we're doing. It is just that they don't like to see the process that we're going through. You know, about sausage making is what we are usually compared to. That's not a pretty sight.
Right. Okay. Well, we appreciate you getting up and sharing your thoughts with us this morning. James Clyburn, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
Thank you so much for having me.